And welcome, esports fans, one and all, to another wonderful day on the PCS Spring Split 2022. I am Pyrotechnics. Joining me on the broadcast for this evening is, of course, Nightstar, and I am so excited to see what our last 6 games of the week have to hold. Before we get underway with everything, I would like to take a brief moment to thank our wonderful sponsors there, of course, CTBC Bank and Caliber. Thank you for making the PCS possible. Now, Nightstar, we've had a few shakeups in the standings of late, and some teams are certainly coming out swinging. Some big surprises, at least a couple of them for me yesterday.
Yeah, most undoubtedly so. There were definitely some surprise results, and I think at the end of week 2, our standings are also somewhat surprising comparative to how we started the week last week, where it was like after that first day we saw, hey, Beyond Gaming, they got that big upset. We thought, hey, it's Beyond Gaming split to lose, but now towards the end of week 2 you're looking at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, really, even with some player changes and some roster shakeups, I didn't exactly expect them to be sitting at 2-2. Some of the teams that got off to a rougher start really managed to get their way back into it. I'm looking at the likes of PSG Talon, who did lose their first game against Beyond. And then, of course, some of our new faces have come out just absolutely guns blazing. And sure, they're stacked full of talent that people are well aware of, but the team colors themselves coming new into this. I'm looking at the likes of CTBC Flying Oyster. I'm looking at the likes of Deep Cross Gaming coming up undefeated. They're going to play each other today too. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about yesterday's games. We did see 2 Deep Cross Gaming matches, and the second one is definitely the more surprising result for me, not because I didn't expect them to win, but because they just played it so well to a T, and I think Beyond Gaming certainly have a few answers to find.
Yeah, and I mean, that game in particular was pretty hotly contested until that one fateful fight where all of a sudden DCG, they win that fight and snowball into the Baron, and then after that Baron comes through, then it's just really just game over from there. DCG, they know how to play the macro game. It's really when it comes to these smaller skirmishes and mechanical fights that maybe we can see them struggle a little bit, because Minji was doing very, very well in a lot of these smaller fights. It was just once the game developed a little bit too far, then it got out of hand. But now we are into the standings, and of course, we touched on it. Beyond Gaming, they started out hot. At least it looked that way, but they're sitting right in the middle of the pack right now, and I think the biggest surprise to me also is Meta Falcon team. They started out 2-0, but since then, 0-3.
Yeah, it does seem like this team has found some limitations. I'm wondering if they can, surpass that, maybe play a little bit more to some of the strengths that we've seen them bring before. Of course, a team coming out of Collegiate, already a surprise to see on this stage, but the fact that they had such stellar superstar coaching staff behind them that haven't really been able to find an answer in 3 games. I'm curious to see if they can turn their split around here, even though it is still early days. Of course, we have, the newcomers, CTBC Flying Oyster, Deep Cross, both sitting at 5-0, with PSG Talon, defending champions, not far behind. But also, some of the teams at the bottom of the table have managed to find a few victories. Hurricane Gaming and Impunity Esports, both with a win apiece. And Impunity definitely looking like they are more on the up and up. But let's get into today's matches, because we have Sem9 still in the hunt, still winless after having their first week of games delayed. We'll round it out with a double header here. First against Beyond, that's a tough ask. Impunity should be a lot closer to winnable, but again, it's coming at the time when Impunity are starting to look better, and they've started Pinway. They're going to do it again here today, and it does seem like it's made a difference.
The second game will certainly be very interesting to watch from a Sem9 fan perspective, because we do have Caspiel playing today in the jungle role instead of Arashi. We'll see if he gets to play back-to-back, but for sure in this first game, we will see him in tonight. And if he does play in the follow-up game, Caspiel was the one to bring Impunity into the PCS. He was the one to get them through promotion, and immediately was dropped from that roster. So perhaps looking for a bit of a revenge arc in game number 2.
I do love a good grudge match, and I think if there's ever a time for Caspiel to start, as he is going to be in the first game today, I hope they keep him in for game number 2, because that will certainly get just a little bit spicy there, Nightstar. Some of the other games I'm looking forward to, obviously that one at the bottom. At the end of the day, that's going to be absolutely lit, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, Sem 9, we've got Shiramine, Caspiel starting, Lazar in the mid lane, Clayx and Philia rounding out our Malaysian representatives, still in the hunt for their first win. But they've definitely started a little back from the starting line. Unfortunate situation with COVID-19 forced them to not play their first week of matches, so they were delayed. That's why we have multiple matches for this week. However, it does seem like this team is still finding its footing, and it's hard to blame them, but at the same time, you gotta find the wins when it counts. Otherwise, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, and a lot of these teams are still figuring things out, a lot of the newer teams with a lot of younger players. So it's not like out of the realm of expectations, but at the same time, because of that as well, you want to start out really fast because the other teams can and probably will catch up as the season progresses. But we get to see Beyond Gaming's lineup right here. Liang in the top lane, Fusha in the jungle, Minji, Wako, and Kino for that bottom half of the map. When it came to that DCG game, Minji looked pretty good. He had a pretty sizable lead over Nesty. You could also kind of chalk that up to Nesty. This is probably the first time where he's had to really lane, even in the Veigar game. You can say
he's
that
dodged
Veigar,
it so far.
Veigar doesn't necessarily need to lane directly against his lane opponent. He can kind of just still play PvE. And Bard, we know what Bard does. He just kind of AFK roams, never interacting in lane. So you can kind of chalk it up to the different stylistic things that he's had to do. But for sure, Beyond Gaming had advantages that game, just weren't able to cash it.
Yeah, that was a very long one too at 40 minutes. Let's take a look at the comparisons, because we are going to be looking at both top laners here. Shiro, obviously not having a win is going to affect your stats a little bit. Liang has played slightly less games just because of the fact that he has been subbed out at least once for Lee Kai, but so far does seem to be their man in the top lane, has favored the Graves, has favored that Tryndamere, and we've been seeing Hullbreaker on that champion as well a decent bit. So a little bit of a shared pool here, but so far Liang definitely has the credentials compared to Shiro. And I think this could be a bit of a tough one if it does turn into more of a carry v carry matchup.
Yeah, that will be the big difference, I think, right now, just because of how important top lane is in the meta, even though, yes, it's mostly been bot lane focused, but there's some of these top lane carries that can really get out of hand, like your Tryndamere or your Gwen. If you get a chance to scale, or if you get a chance to accumulate a lead in lane, it can really get out of hand very, very quick.
Yeah, we are already into picks and bans, and I was about to say not a whole lot surprising there, but Sem9 opts to ban Aphelios away. It does prompt the Zeri. This is a little interesting because we're not going to see that handshake between Aphelios and Jinx now. Someone is going to get their hands on a higher prio.
And we'll see if Sem9 go ahead and ban away the Jinx as well. That would really determine what they prioritize for that first pick. It says that they're not looking to focus on bottom lane, at least with the first pick here. And they're really taking a decent amount of time to contemplate over it. And I wonder if that may have bugged out there. So we'll for sure come back to it at, very shortly. But Beyond Gaming, we'll see what they go ahead, ban away. Perhaps they decide to ban away the Jinx to make sure Sem9 don't get it firsthand. But
no.
The Zin's still left available. Karma, the one taken away, that could be to perhaps limit either an Ezreal Karma lane or to prevent the Smite top lane sort of strategy. But as expected, it is going to be Sem9 locking in the Jinx.
Yeah, Clayx has had one game on this champion. I was wondering if they would ban both of them out and then opt into more of the Jhin style, but it does leave other power picks up and available. Liang has really favored and trended towards this Tryndamere, which is going to be a problem for Shiro, and honestly a problem for all of Sem9. As he gets that lock-in, we'll have to see. So far, has 100% win rate in the 2 games he has played it in, and it's been kind of terrifying. I'm just going to say that. Also leaves up the Zinzao for Husha.
Yeah, then getting the Zen, Tryndamere, pretty nice 2 picks there. And the really nice part is the fact that even though you've locked in Tryndamere very early on, you can still have the potential to move it into that mid lane, depending on that mid lane matchup. Now, Lazar, I feel like he's been given a lot of the priority when it comes to these Sem9 drafts, where he gets to play what he wants, and he's brought out the LeBlanc, and it's been a bit of a struggle for him to kind of get things going here. Hopefully, he's able to kind of dig deep and find an answer, but against Minji, probably one of our more skilled mid laners, that will again be a very difficult task to try and get going here.
Yeah, I think they're going to wait for a little while. Obviously won't have the counter pick. I would expect Beyond to hold that one for sure. However, they do lock in a priority jungle. Jarvan has been, I feel, a bigger priority around the world than it has here in the PCS, but we have started to see it coming back into the game outside of just the Meta Falcon team, Avenger squad, if you will.
Yeah. And J4, usually, I mean, it feels okay to just go ahead, lock him in, because he has some of those early ganking possibilities, but at the same time, you'd like to see the opposing AD carry or mid laner first before locking it in, because he's just so much more effective when it's up against immobile backlines, and Ezreal is definitely a champion that does not fit in that mold.
Yeah, it's a little weird you opt to ban the Aphelios and then put the Jarvan out there. It's kind of just asking to say, hey, get yourself something safe. Meanwhile, Beyond are going to try to ban out a lot of the top lane champions that can try and contest. Shiro will not get a chance to play the Gragas, and the Jax has been banned away, another good split pushing threat. It does still leave the Graves open. I don't know if you want to opt into that matchup, though.
Graves Tryndamere, very 50-50 matchup. But
Leon Shiro.
Yeah. The big thing is it skews the map very heavily, because when you go for that Graves pick, you go for the flash ghost summoner spells or ghost exhaust. Either way, you're not going teleport, which limits what your team can do without you. And sometimes, a lot of these teams are so used to playing with double teleports that things kind of you get lost in the sauce with your map rotations, because you have to make those plays without that extra teleport.
And this is why I think they're not going to do that, because they've now locked in the Orianna. I think, if anything, yesterday's game against Deep Cross showed a blueprint for how to beat Beyond, because they just didn't look that good in those skirmishes, or excuse me, in those 5v5s. The skirmishes they were a lot better at. And this would be interesting, putting action up top. We have not seen this in the PCS this split, but it has popped up. No, the last second switcheroo! We're trading the grappling hook for the shotgun.
Unfortunate.
Right.
Unfortunate.
I don't like this. I feel like it's just comfort.
Yeah, it is a little bit, I would say, risk adverse here. And I'm not sure if that's really the approach you want to take against perhaps a higher class, higher caliber team in Beyond Gaming. But perhaps they just want to see, all right, we've got Caspiel in for this first game. Let's see how it goes from a more standard perspective, and we'll take it from there. Maybe this is an evaluation game to see how Caspiel does in game number 1 and see what they want to do for game number 2, because it is a back-to-back. So that is something to keep track of for Sem9, as not necessarily a whole lot of time to adapt. And if things go poorly in this game number 1, you do have some concerns, maybe mentally getting away from you in that second game, snowballing into that second game. That could be problematic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, right? Like, you try to keep it a little safe. You try to, like, if you're going to lose this game, you don't want to lose it like hard and fast. You want to try and keep it close and give yourself the confidence. Obviously, the win would be really nice, and they'll certainly try for it. On the Beyond side, Minji also puts his last luck in on the Ahri, which has been rising in prominence lately. Obviously, loves his assassins. It's hard to delete an Orianna off the map, but if the mid gap happens, I feel like that opens up quite a lot of opportunities for Beyond to really run things around the table. Looking at it across the board, it does seem like Beyond has set themselves up for a fair bit of split push. And based on their performances it does seem like splitting themselves up across the map and forcing those skirmishes seems to be the style they're not only more comfortable with, but they execute better.
Yeah, and the really nice part about this Beyond Gaming composition is that when it comes into those 5v5s, who's the Jarvan going to lock down? That's the big question, right? Because if you try and lock down a Tryndamere, that's kind of pointless because you don't necessarily have the one-shot power to take him out immediately before he pops that R, and even then, like, you're blowing a lot of cooldowns on a target that can just go undying, and then
Literally
you've got
everyone
other targets.
has a dash.
Yeah,
Everyone has a dash out of the pit.
Exactly. It's just so hard to lock these champions down, and when you have an Orianna, this is the most frustrating part because you end up getting stuck trying to ult 1 or 2 members rather than getting the free 3 or 4 members that we commonly see in this meta, because a lot of these compositions are classically a lot slow moving and kind of chunky.
Yeah, that's one way to put it for sure. I'm a little bit worried here for Sem9, but maybe they got a trick up their sleeves. Obviously, they're feeling confident to start Caspiel. Well, oh boy, I think we're gonna have to get him back for just a second. Hopefully, we'll get that pause. Yeah, sometime.
Yes?
Hello.
Oh, it was
back.
probably just paused earlier.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, I got debated. Egg on my face as Caspiel gets the start in this one down towards the bottom side with a little help from PlayX and Philia. Yeah, I mean, I think if this laning phase goes well, that's another story, right? Because Jarvan can get in there early. He doesn't need his Cataclysm to gank once he's got Flag and Drag. But yeah, this is such a slippery comp from Beyond Gaming, and
yes,
they certainly have the experience to deal with something like this and the talent in the individual lanes to avoid it.
I think this game is going to come down to your pre-4 gank, try and get 1 or 2 ganks off before level 6. Level 6 is, of course, going to be a big spike, but you need to be able to burn flashes before that level 6 spike where you have the additional burst because how mobile these champions are. But, bot trade.
Okay, that actually turned out okay.
Even. Yeah, relatively even, not the worst, but still somewhat favored towards the Beyond Gaming duo. But at the same time, you're going to get that extra level to make up for those difference in health trade.
Yeah, speaking of health trades, Lazar having a little bit of trouble dealing. There's balls on both sides, but Minji's goes in both directions with that Orbit Deception. Dodges that time around. That was nice, as they both ding level 3. This is a lane I definitely want to watch, because even though Orianna is supposed to be a safe champion, you give Minji an assassin, and I feel like you always need to keep an eye on mid lane.
Yeah, and if that first assassination does go off very well, then things get really, really scary. Of course, Ahri rising in prominence because of her ult changes, getting that extra reset capabilities to continue to dash and be a menace through a team fight is really what's making her such a big force right now, especially in solo queue.
Yeah, I mean, resets are the order of the day, right? This is why Jinx is such a high prominence champion. Obviously, bot laner's got a big boost once the teleport changes came in at the start of the season. Caspiel letting that crab expire here as he rotates down. A lot of vision on the Beyond side focused up towards the top for right now. Although they do ping out. I think they might have seen him crossing through river, or maybe that was a Sem9 ward.
I mean, that's really just a prediction, right? Because you're clearing that top crab, so naturally Caspiel is going to be towards that bottom crab.
Nice hook.
Ooh.
So squishy, but so slippery. They couldn't quite get Kino on the Flame Chompers.
Yeah, just doesn't quite arm in time. A little bit unfortunate there, but you can see what this lane can do. But at the same time, on the flip side for Beyond Gaming, you can also see the makings of what could be trouble later on when they try on the Sem9 side to lock a target down. It's just mobility upon mobility all over the place. And I mean, it's really just the difference in focus right now. For Beyond, they want to make sure Liang's able to get out of, out of these first couple of levels all right. Make sure he doesn't get ganked by the Jarvan, and once he hits level 6, becomes incredibly oppressive. While we haven't seen non-hull breaker builds, I think this is...
It's already over. You can just go back to your point. Caspiel could do absolutely nothing about that.
Caspiel is just watching and was like, You're probably gone, buddy.
Mm.
And Filio definitely takes a big L there.
Silver lining on the reset argument from earlier. Ari can't get resets on her ult when she doesn't have her ult yet.
That is true. And thankfully, Felia also held on to both summoners.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he knew he was dead. This is one of the risks of roaming with Thresh, right? Like, when there are so many of these, like, super tanky engaged supports, like Leona and Nautilus in the meta, Thresh kind of feels a bit more like paper by comparison. Like, sure, he's got more flexibility, but, like, then that happens. He's also level 3.
Oh, Caspiel's going to say hello.
Yeah, one level on
Husha,
has a level lead. But Husha's got a bit of a tempo advantage here. Lazar should come in to help him out.
No
Minch can actually dash this wall.
Oh, Lazar?
There we go. Caspiel is out flagging Dragon. Unfortunately, Lazar might have been a little baited here. Does walk away. Okay, all right. We'll settle down for now.
Actually walks away without having to burn the flash is really, really nice. Good control coming in from Lazar. And as a result, you know, yes, you lose a lot of health if you're Caspiel, but you still have a level lead, and you're, and the only big cost is you have to recall and lose the crab. But we see a shift in vision. It started out with a very topside focus for Beyond, but because the Liang is now level 6, you're not too worried about him anymore. So now you see that shift. There used to be 2 wards up topside. Now, well, there's still a control ward around that blue, and you're really safe with just leaving that as the only ward, and then really focusing on those 4 wards on that bot river.
Yeah, and I feel like they could have saved their money, to be honest, because Caspiel just hasn't made an appearance in the lane. Like, the closest he got was trying to back up Philia, but that play kind of just got stopped before it was started. And it's all the more wonder why they opted into this Jarvan, because your window to do something is closing fast. And now Shiro's in trouble as Liang looks to hunt him down. Yeah, you can't escape the Tryndamere. Flash, though, okay. All right, I was wrong. Either way, 2 sums burned for 1.
Yeah, but now Liang still has flash. Once his ult comes up, which is going to be much shorter than a Graves flash, he can just repeat the same move, and this time he will cash in on a kill because Shiro Mine has absolutely no escapes. And yeah, just going back over to the Caspiel point you brought up, it is really baffling that they would go for an early Jarvan pick. Of course, at level 6, he brings a little bit of burst damage, but yeah, unless if they try and force an early dragon fight with that ult advantage, it really leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, a lot of their plays are really telegraphed too, because Beyond are just so much better vision, but they're going to go for it anyways. Shockwave, they do pull in. Oh, the burst! That's what we were looking for. A lot expended for 1, and Husha is actually going to just barely walk away with this.
They get 2.
Never mind, he goes in for Caspiel.
1 for 1. No, they have no mana?
They got it. Oh, wow, they burned a flash for that. They really wanted to pick it up, Playex. Meanwhile, it's action all over the Rift right now as Liang and Shiro are trading. That was Sem9 favored, but it was very forced and very expensive. But the burst was there.
Yeah. Right there you saw the base damage. When it comes to Jarvan all at level 6, it does do a lot of damage, and that's exactly the case there. Minji gets 0 time to respond, and crucially, also burned the ultimate. So, even less safety for the Fox Lady in the mid lane, and Husha also ends up going down. However, 2 flashes burned by both the carries.
Playex got a little hype there. He did not need to flash for that, and he did not get the kill, but that's okay. You know, it's a jinx. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, in Jinx's kit, got a little bit too excited there.
Yeah. But Lazar getting 2 kills is pretty good right now, because he had been getting outlaned.
Yes, that is important, but now the clap's coming in onto this Rift Herald. It is a 3v3. A little bit more damage for Sem9, though.
Yeah, now that they have 4, I feel like Beyond might be able to just kind of walk up and steal at Sem9's lunch money. They're going to walk away with this. Sem9 know that they can't contest. So still a lead for Beyond. The Rift Herald, pretty decent tempo advantage for them.
I think they're going to try and cut off Beyond, though, as they try and make a rotation.
They got to be careful not to get caught in the choke. Yeah, this is interesting. A lot of teams, they will handshake, right? And in a lot of leagues, the prio is a lot higher on the Dragon side of the Rift. But I feel like it's a bit flipped in PCS. We've seen a lot of Rift Herald prioritization.
a decent chunk of Rift Herald prioritization. And I mean, with these two compositions, it feels a bit of a shame that there's no early dragon priority here. Yes, it's a Hextech Drake. I would say it's not a bad option, but Shiromine, I think he... Oh, okay, actually plays it quite well, able to dodge out, avoid a lot of the damage, and that's actually not a bad trade there.
Well, this is, you know, what we're seeing here is the, you know, picture of history, right? Like, once guns were invented, Nightstar, swords became obsolete. A much more elegant weapon, obviously, for a more civilized age, but Shiro knows that he has superior firepower. As long as he doesn't get in melee range. Oh no! No, he's fine. He's got Ghost. It's okay.
Yeah, you know what's the more terrifying thing? It's chickens. And,
chickens is... I mean, literally, it's... I love how that animation, that little emote, has not changed since the early days of League. I'll talk about that later, talk about how old I am. But looks like we got a big old gank onto Lazar, and he could not get onto the Lantern. And with some help from friends, Minji gets revenge.
Yeah, a really nice pick off there, coming in from beyond. They're really indexing into that mid lane, try and get this Ahri freed up now. And that will just translate into a top dive. They'll throw down the Rift Herald. Nope.
They spotted Caspiel.
Like,
yeah, it's not safe.
It looks like they didn't want to over-index into this top lane play. But it does mean that getting shorter on time to capitalize on farming plates. And now they're actually going to turn their attention towards this Dragon, which has been up probably 5 minutes longer than what we usually would see in a typical game of League of Legends in this current meta.
Might live a little longer than that, although Sem9 are going to back off from this one. Interesting, I think there was an opportunity there for Beyond to pop Shelly down mid, but they just opted for the safe, neutral objective, and it does seem like there's a little bit of a slower response on this Beyond side than maybe we could have expected coming into today.
A very slow early game. Coming in from Beyond.
Oh, wow.
And now, okay, this is where they choose to fight.
Yeah, gonna go for it over the blue buff, and now Caspiel gonna transfer it over before he can drag across the map. Meanwhile, Sem9 and the rest of them will limp away, but that was a questionable decision.
Pyra, I'm not sure if blue buff is more important than Dragon, but Shiromine is...
a dead man.
Dead.
Yeah, Liang actually going to walk away with that one. So this is where we start to see the Tryndamere really having fun. Despite being a little bit behind on the item game, should be able to buy it right back. And now Shelly charges down mid. Time for the plates. They only had a minute left anyways to try and get them. Lazar clears it away, but one big charge is something. And Beyond extend that gold lead to about 2,500 in this game.
Yeah, and so that kill up in that top side on Shiromine, that was with Hullbreaker. So that was with the bonus defensive stats. As we get to see the replay here, I mean, Liang just chases him down. It's just what,
well, I mean, this is
he does.
This is some diff right here. This is what this was all set up earlier on. I know he flashes anyways, and he still gets him. Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't get better than that, and that's just kind of how the matchup goes. That's why we've seen a change in summoner spells as well, in just Graves running Ghost Exhaust sometimes, just because it gives you that extra dueling pressure, whereas Ghost Flash gives you a little bit more ability to play around in these 5v5s, but exclusively in that 1v1. You would like to have that exhaust, but now Liang is getting very close to either the Gale Force or, of course, the Kraken Slayer. We'll see which option he does go towards, although Gale Force has been, I would say, the more favored one as of late, because a lot of these players are favoring that extra mobility, whether it's AD carry or top lane tournament.
for sure. And on the opposite side, of course, Waka would already complete the
It's a party!
Lazar, there we're gonna go! Once again, they just bait the Ahri, but Minji dashes away, and Caspiel can't quite finish it. He gets charmed right in, and they just collapse on. Will finally get that kill, but at what cost, Nightstar? Liang has shown up to the party. Chickens onto Lazar. There's the box in Philia. Well, he's gonna be put 6 feet under as soon as that stasis ends. Right back in, and Liang will bite it to the tower. Wow, that was a lot bloodier than I thought. Meanwhile, down bottom, oh, Wako! Hello.
Well, I mean, classic PCS fashion, the game's close until it just blows up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's exactly what happens there. Liang, I mean, viewers understand why I'm going what? Because Liang had ult for that exchange, ends up not using it, dies to the Orianna ball on the back end. But after, with all that mid lane action, we're going to see this bot lane happen here. Clayx eats Q, okay, probably eats an ult.
Recall. Yeah, I think this is where the true shot comes in. No, he didn't have it, actually. Clayx tried to help the fight.
All right, he actually ends up staying there, and Wako just takes matters into his own hands. He has just 50% more. Yeah, after that Q lands, then you're looking for lethal. It's very easy to find lethal there. Even kind of scuffs it just a little bit, but I mean,
yeah,
there's just a health difference.
Now that right there is exactly why Beyond we're looking for Wako to replace Doggo. That was nice. That was a good play.
Exactly. Like, it's certainly a different player, but the killer instinct is still there, and that's kind of what they lost with Doggo, is that killer instinct coming from the bot lane. And you don't see too many of those players in that bottom lane. Even, you would say, Unified, who is an excellent hyper carry. He doesn't always have that killer instinct the same way, and some of that is coming from the fact that he's a lot more experienced and realizes, hey, I can let the rest of my team kind of work its magic because he's been in PSG, right? He has been a little bit more fortunate, I would say, in his teams. Wako.
Lazar. No, you dead.
So long.
Liang, it feels like Liang does not forgive or forget any slights in this game. He will punish the tower for its transgression soon enough. Meanwhile, it's going to be another Dragon take by Beyond Gaming. They're definitely in the driver's seat, in control of this one, but they have been giving up kills. They have been keeping it close, because Sem9 have been fighting back. It's just seeming like they are a step or two behind in a lot of cases. They will get Rift Herald and get a charge off. And that's good to try and open up this map. They got to get out with their lives now, because here comes the 3-man, and they are right on top of Clayx. No more Jinx in this fight, as Beyond split the rest of Sem9 into pieces and tag team their way to getting themselves 3 kills for none.
Oh, Lord. That was brutal, Pyra.
Yeah.
And
Team diff.
I mean, we can also see the cooldown differential, right? Because for Sem9, they're very oriented around this Cataclysm Shockwave combination. So if they don't have those 2 big cooldowns, it's very hard for them to conduct a play. Whereas for Megabank Beyond Gaming, they don't necessarily need all of their big cooldowns to start a play. They can just have 1 or 2 ults, and even without ultimates, they're very effective in finding multi-man CC chains like this.
Yeah, that was brilliant by Kino, and this is kind of what we expect from this player. It set up so much. Meanwhile, Minji was being targeted, but he's so slippery. He's able to get away. Minji tag teams back in. You see the finisher. Husha, by the way, is going absolutely bonkers this game. And Shiro, yeah, there's that 1 second where he turns, and he's like, no. Just drops the spear and runs.
Yeah, this game has definitely gone into the dumpster for Sem9. We'll see if they're able to find any picks, but again, it's composition. Lazar, he's gone.
He did use the shockwave. I think he gets out of there. There we go. And that's the thing, right? Like, it's not just defensively. Even on the offense, they've been able to get, like, the shockwave dunk combo onto, like, maybe 1 or 2 people. And that's just because Beyond are so good at not being grouped up, at forcing the skirmishes. This comp does exactly what they want it to. And as you said, they can just use a couple of ultimates, whereas Sem9 are kind of forced into the Wombo combo if they want to get anything done.
Yeah.
Liang will just walk away with the red buff, and also looking to hunt down Shiramine.
Shiro!
I think he's a dead man. And he actually doesn't care about being hooked, but maybe he should now, as he's running out of ultimate. And the rest of his team tags back in. Rocket goes wide from Clayx, but he's trying to keep the poke on. And Husha is just so darn tanky in that Crescent Guard. and they will not be able to get any kills in return for the life of Philia.
Yeah. And once again, they expend half of their big wombo combo combination. The Cataclysm Shockwave combination just hasn't been able to happen once the game got out of lane, right? As we saw, Lazar, once he got collapsed upon in that top side, he had to burn his ultimate to try and disengage. Then right there, Caspiel uses his ult to bail out his team to disengage the rest of his team out of that situation. So once more, we're stuck in a position where Sem9, you can't fight anymore. Shiromine could just get chased down once more as well. So it's really, this is a team composition that really sucks to play from behind. And even from ahead, it's very frustrating because of the tools Beyond Gaming can just constantly stay out of reach. And yeah, we can see where some of those draft issues do come forward.
We're having a little bit of fun.
He really wants this.
Leong's just like, no, this is my jungle. You don't get to live here.
This is my ward.
No, like, okay, you're gonna pay for that. Meanwhile, it looks like a bait, but he's Tryndamere. What are you gonna do? He's not the only one having fun this game, by the way, because I see a Death's Dance on Husha, who is 6-1. That is as scary as Inzao.
Yeah, and the big thing here, again, this is, of course, the changed Death's Dance here, so it has essentially replaced Steric's Gauge in a lot of these Bruiser build paths, and it's just such a much better item as well, giving him a damage reduction to both physical and magic damage, or delayed damage, I suppose. And now we also look at these builds, like there's not a whole lot of damage coming in from Sem9. Look at this Orianna build. Has Lucidity Boots, not the Sork Shoes, so no burst damage. And
you're just
also
trying to get as many shockwaves.
Yeah, also itemizing towards the Zanya's Hourglass. So very defensive build as well. So you're trying to get off as the extra Summoner spell cooldown and just getting more shockwaves in general, but they have to have the damage to burst the target, and that does not cut it.
Not at all. Yeah, this is definitely looking very rough for Sem9. I mean, we did not come into today expecting them to pull out the victory, but we were hoping that they were going to be able to keep it a little bit closer. Early game, we saw some signs of life still. They were able to collapse on Minji. This comp, though, was always going to have trouble from the get-go, and unfortunately, it just feels like Beyond Gaming with their level of experience and their level of expertise at playing this split style is just picking Sem9 apart.
Yep. They're really just going to work now. Probably won't see anything too extravagant happen, at least as far as team fighting goes, until maybe that Baron. I mean, Sem9, they have to figure out when to draw the line. That's the big thing, right? Because you have the Hourglass, which is nice for an Orianna, but it's not a damage spike, so it doesn't even feel like, all right, we've got this item, now we can fight. It's still more of a, well, maybe the rapid fire gives us enough of an edge, but I feel like they have to wait for what is now going to be, of course, the completed Eclipse for the Graves, so maybe that gives a little bit of an edge, but at the same time, you probably need the Last Whisper item, but to wait for one more item, the game's probably done by then.
Yeah, you're going to have to hold on for a bumpy ride here, right? Because there are comeback mechanics. You do have that Graves who can do a lot of damage. You also have Playax on Jinx, which is a big pop-off champion, the pop-off champion in the meta right now, but you need to wait for that scaling, and you need to not just die out in the middle of nowhere. Caspiel, he tries for the dunk. I think he might have been out. Meanwhile, Wako actually getting taken low, and the flash forward. There's the shutdown. Look for Kino now. Maybe they have the opportunity, but the cavalry is arrived. He's getting collapsed. Husha is massive, and Playax has nowhere to go. Never mind. The hope vanishes in the blink of an eye here, as though they got Wako. They will pay dearly with the rest of their lives. Philia and Shiro trying to dash and duck and dive and dip and dodge away. But only Shiromine will tell the tale of what went down in that jungle.
Shiromine shows up late and says, all right, hello, friends. I will take my leave, as we're going to get a replay, but not exactly the finest look for Caspiel in his first appearance in the PCS, as throws out the flag, whiffs, and now he's stuck in a bad spot. So
I feel like
he just goes ahead and YOLOs it.
Yeah, I mean, like, credit to him. He gets the dunk on Wako, I guess, and then it sets up Plagues for a big shutdown. Maybe they could have had Kino,
There's just too much dive.
Yeah, there's too much dive. The Shockwave, it's too hard to execute. Plagues is isolated. There's nowhere for him to go. Lazar does get to walk away. I misspoke a little earlier about only Shiro surviving. But you're right.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, he does get chased down here, I believe.
Yeah, no, I think he gets away, just barely.
Oh, okay.
But here's the thing, right? Like, you're right. Like, Shiro, totally on another page. He gets there. It's like that scene in Community, walking in the door with the pizza and like everything's on fire.
Oh, it's just a disaster. We get to see the damage charts, and sure, there's damage being pumped out, but at the same time, how much of that is into a Tryndamere?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it doesn't count.
How much? I mean, how much of that is into a Xin that's ulted? So, I'm not sure if that's also taken into consideration with these damage numbers, but for sure, if it is, then that's a problem. Now Liang's on a flank. They are cut off!
They are, but they did manage to push them aside. True Shot Barrage comes in. Meanwhile, now they're on the full retreat path and into the CC train. Oh no, turn off the cameras. It's too brutal to watch. Everything's going wrong here as Sem9 get absolutely deleted. Caspiel limps away. Wouldn't you know it, it's Baron time, Nightstar.
I'm surprised it's taken them this long to try and go for a Baron play, because it is 26.5 minutes into the game. They have an insane advantage already, so it feels a little bit wild that they haven't gone and pulled the trigger on this objective sooner rather than later, or at least try and bait a fight. But once more, Sem9 make a play for this objective bounty, which is of course very nice to get a little bit of gold, but it is only 250 gold, so it's not all that much. And now they turn in attention towards the dragon or dragon area, and the chase is just on. And Kino once more, just he's been outstanding. He just keeps getting these 3-man knockups, and it's not even like you need the ultimate to make those plays either. That's the big part, is like, yes, the move speed helps coming in from the Rakan, but he hits the 3-man knockup. It's not like he has to hit the charm, and now Kino is just baiting more. Okay.
Caspiel? Alright, he's, yeah, he's dead man.
He's done with this game.
Yeah, no, he oh, good lord. He had Thornmail, and it did not help. Meanwhile, Ophelia charmed and deleted by Wako and Husha. Another charm. Kino is on fire, man. Look at this guy go. I'll take the dragon while it's all happening. I mean, this is very over, but they are styling on Sem9 right now.
At the very least, they're giving BYG fans a lot of relief here.
Yeah.
They are just hard styling on this Sem9 roster, and unfortunately for our Malaysian fans, it's you know, gotta hope that the Impunity game does go better. Of course, this was expected to be a much rougher game for them of the two games, and so far it for sure is a rough time.
But if you're a BYG fan, certainly a much happier one as they improve to 3-2 with a convincing, crushing victory over the Malaysian representatives. Beyond Gaming, I think fans can definitely breathe a sigh of relief. Absolutely. I'm excited to see what they can do. We'll see them later today against J-Team as well. A doubleheader for both these squads. That should be a banger.
Should be pretty exciting. And I mean, BYG, I'm not saying that they didn't prepare for this game, but I would say that they probably took less stock and invested a little bit less prep on this game, and instead a little bit more on that J-Team matchup, but still able to execute. My only problem is they seemed a little slow in their rotations, right? Where or not necessarily rotations, but still on the map, where they were very methodical, and perhaps a little bit too methodical with a composition that could easily pick off people time after time again. You saw how much mobility they just had, and it worked both ways, right? it was very hard to lock down people, but it also made it easy for them to pick people off because they could gap close very, very quickly.
And they had a lot of CC that they could layer it just in any way they wanted, right? I mean, I think Kino set up so many of those plays just on the grand entrance, which is incredible. At the same time, yeah, I agree with you. I think there were a number of like plays that they maybe just hesitated for like a second or two on. And I don't really know why that is. Maybe that's just Beyond Gaming just thinking, all right, you know, getting in their HUDs a little bit about the results they've had recently. Even though Sem9 is a winless squad, they didn't want to give any openings. And in the early game, there were a couple of openings that were taken, mostly single target burst as soon as level 6 hit. But it did feel like they were firmly in control of the game as soon as laning phase was over.
But yeah, for Sem9, like, you could see why they went with the first phase of the draft that they did, because you did see a couple of times that Orianna Shockwave into the Cataclysm did work out, but that quickly faded away, and the bigger issue was the fact that they just didn't have both of those cooldowns up more often than not at the same time. So that was the big problem for that composition. And the other big problem, of course, was that that composition was built upon those two skills being up at the same time. So they had no comp beyond that.
Yeah, and beyond that was Beyond Gaming, and it just looked so good for them overall. I think they can definitely have some confidence going into their J-Team matchup. You talked about preparation, how teams, you know, might want to shift their focus for one team or another. While Sem9 were probably preparing more for the Impunity game, I would think Beyond were probably preparing for their matchup against J-Team a little bit later on today as well, and I'm really excited to see that, because J-Team's another squad that we saw stumble a little bit out of the gates, admittedly against an unexpectedly strong Deep Cross Gaming. But I think these are two squads that are very much in the running for a top 4 finish. Beyond, before this split, I think everyone would have thought, okay, well, this is number 1, number 2 for the most part. Doggo going obviously hurt the team a little bit, but they found more than competent replacement in Wako. At the same time, the mid lane, I think, has started to shore up its identity. Minji loves these assassins. He looks good on them as well. And yeah, just fixing those little tiny things where maybe they find a 5v5 that doesn't look as good. Maybe they hesitate too long against some of the stronger teams, the top flight of the PCS. That could spell trouble, but there's plenty of time for Beyond Gaming to really reclaim their glory and lead the charge, especially considering how well they've done in their first year. Looking at this game, 28 at 40 seconds. It feels like it didn't have to be that long, Nightstar, for sure, because you look at that scoreboard, and like, the moment Liang just started like 1v1ing Shiramine and running all over the map, it kind of felt like it was over.
I mean, 20 minutes into the game, it was already a nigh and insurmountable lead, right? It was at around 8k, which is pretty hard to deal with. And MVP is actually going to go to Liang. Of course, he demanded a lot of map pressure with this Tryndamere. I personally would have given it to Kino because of his roam's mid lane and just a lot of the dominating team fight initiations he had, but Liang also had a pretty inspiring performance coming in with a lot of those flanks. So still well-deserved coming in from Liang on this Tryndamere, and it feels like this Tryndamere pick is going to be very powerful pick, especially against some of those weaker teams where you can just kind of free scale because you're not getting punished in that solo lane.
Yeah, you know, whenever there's a chance to skill check an opponent, I think Liang is definitely a great player to take it. And if there was any doubt that he'd be sharing more of the limelight with Likai, I think he may have silenced that for the time being. But that is going to be it for this game. When we return, Sem9 returns once more to the stage to take on Impunity. Don't go anywhere.